Welcome to Massive Beers. My name is Matt. We do the beer stuff here. Mix pack time. Haven't done one of these mix packs in a while. I kind of like doing them. I think sometimes you get a little bit of that kind of old school kind of album vibes where they kind of tell a story from beginning to end. This one comes courtesy of Firestone Walker. It is... They call it the Firestone Walker mix pack. I call it the Firestone Walker IPA mix pack because they're all basically hopped up jams. Yeah, Firestone Walker sent this off. I was going to do these individually, but they're kind of like, you know, you got a pale, you got a 5.9 and 6.57. There's a journey here. So I figured might as well do them all together. Now, which beers are we doing here? We'll talk about it. I have it written over here so I don't have to read story time off of this suckers. We have their California IPA, which is an all-new Firestone Walker California IPA. It's future forward, with I don't know how a future forward beer is. Beer from the West Coast roots and Firestone Walker Flair. Luponic Distortion, which I've had a bunch of times. It is their trailblazer that continues to break rules. Luponic Distortion turns up the volume with mind-bending flavors. Union Jack. Can I have these? Yeah, I have that one's here because it's 7%. So we're talking about 6.5, right? No, sorry. 6.5. They don't have these by ABV. This is an amateur hour. For this guy, not them. 6.5, 5.9, 7% Union Jack. Huge flavors pack a punch, an icon of the West Coast IPA style for those who like their beer loud and proud. And then their XPA, which is a next generation future forward pale ale with Southern Hemisphere and California style. Southern Hemisphere hops, California style. So, I mean, label-wise, they are essentially all the same beer. Just with their own little kind of twists on them, as you can see there. So you're talking about a little pale ale, a little hoppy jam, quite a bit bigger hoppy jam, and the biggest of hoppy jams, at least in this mix pack. So let's do this. Let's get this started. We got 4 glasses. They don't all match. I don't care. I don't care that much about it. It does bug me a little bit, perfectly honest with you. We'll see what this sucker lands. We'll do these individually, so you can we don't get gigantic heads on them. We'll do the itty bitty. We'll do Luponic next. It's super muggy. It's super rainy. I assure you my glassware is clean. If there's a little bit of spots, just because my shed, it's out here. I live in a farm. People. What are you going to do? That sucker a whirl. And last but not least, not gonna lie to you, they all look very similar. You know, ABV is not going to tell the story when it comes to looks. You figure we're running quite a big gamut of sizes and styles that you figured it would look decently different, but not the case here. Let's get these set up so we have a little bit of framing. There's that. There's that. And there's that. So, yeah, I mean, again, please ignore my Dirty Glass Mafia, but they definitely look the part of... Oh, no, I'm lying. You probably see it better on camera. Slight little bit of haze. These 3 look very, very similar as far as coloration. This one has a slight bit of extra haze on it. Very minimal, though, but very similar. But there is the subtle gradient, and then when you get to the end here, you can see this sucker is much, much just richer and amber in color. But they all look the part of what you expect from West Coast kind of style haze. Let's give it a first one a nose. Ooh. Bright tropical fruits. We're talking about this sucker here. Bright tropical fruits. All the tropical fruit are belong to us. It's very vibrant, very bright. Brings all this juiciness to it. Very surprised the amount of hops that are coming off this, being this low ABV. Comes off very much aromatically like a hazy IPA, but as you can see, it's relatively clear. I mean, it's the haziest of the group, but it's not hazy by today's standards. Wow, man, that is tropical fruit juice. Let's dive into Luponic. We're expecting a little bit more West Coasty vibes on this sucker. Yeah, I mean, you're still getting a bit of citrus and tropical fruit, but there's not a big, huge kind of a bittering component on this, at least a precursor to bittering. We're probably going to dive into that a little bit more into the taste, but a much more muted nose, at least from a fruit aromatic going from this one to this one. Kind of surprised. I mean, not a huge jump in ABV, but You know, big nonetheless. It smells quite nice. I'm just quite surprised how over here we had that much tropical fruit juice kind of just shooting out of the glass. Let's dig this sucker down here. I'm going to bounce back and forth between these two. So this is their California IPA. This is their California IPA, right? Luponic Distortion. I want to make sure I'm getting this correct. Very similar in the nose. This one might come just a little bit ahead as far as just fruitiness. Aromatics, again, I think we're going to dip in a little bit West Coasty vibes. But man, very, very similar noses on these two. Separated by what, 5.9 and 6.5, I believe? Yes. So, you know, half a point. Again, ABV isn't the end all be all, but that's how we're kind of not ranking these, but ordering these. Again, man, that first little itty bitty jam, it's throwing some major heat with that tropical fruitiness, and it really, I would say, the nose is much smaller as you go along on this. Now, we're not dealing with scientific method here. I smelt this first, second, third, and fourth. That's kind of how I'd rank it for as aromatics, but also, you know, if I smelt this one first, would a little bit be a bit more prominent? I don't know. But what I can say is if I smell this sucker over here, you know, just a little bit of earthy vibes, you know, nothing big as far as fruit components. And I go back to this itty bitty sucker over here. Yeah, it is a bit more muted, but man, I'm getting that tropical fruit over here. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. Like I said, this isn't scientific method, but man, the amount of tropical fruit I got off this one definitely kind of, I would say, set me up, or set these ones up for something a bit harder to pull off because of how big that one kind of just jumped out of the glass. But honestly, the nose doesn't get much bigger across the board for me, at least. Could be quite a bit different in the taste. We're just going to jump in, find out. Cheers, y'all. Yeah, I mean, go right back to that big tropical fruit, almost like it's like a passion fruit guava kind of mix here. But there is the bittering here. You're not going to mistake these beers for not being born on the West Coast. Even if you look at something like this, which has this really tropical, what you'd expect from a big old hazy kind of fruit portion in a show, especially at its lower ABV levels, it's still it's a bit of punch of hop here. It's green. It's not super resinous, super kind of piney. But it's definitely West Coast vibes. And balances absolutely perfectly with the way the kind of fruit portion of the show kind of comes off on the sucker, because you're dealing with passion fruit. For me, you know, it's the fruit itself, but even like passion fruit juice can just perceptionally be quite sweet for me, just the way passion fruit kind of presents itself. So to have that nice bittering in there, counting everything off, quite nice. Luponic. I saw a fly flying around here somewhere. This, I will say this. You can tell there's an ABV jump here. I usually don't talk about that so much in side-by-sides like this. I kind of talk about how they impact what they're drinking, but I can actually taste, I can feel an alcohol difference here. There's a mouthfeel difference, not necessarily making it thick, but it just has this density to it. You can't replicate without that. Without alcohol. That's why a lot of those NA beers, they're just missing something for a lot of people. It's not so much the alcohol. Sure, that can be part of it, but a lot of it has to do with the mouthfeel that comes along with alcohol. And this one, definitely, you can tell it has a bit more fullerness to it as far as an ABV goes. Very similar to this beer in the sense that it is fruit forward. It is tropical fruity, a bit of citrus, and you have that kind of little bit more elevated kind of West Coast bittering, but it doesn't come off as that perceptionally sweet as that passion fruit typically comes off to me that I talked about previously. This fly's bugging me. these two, honestly, for me, they're very similar beers. I wouldn't be surprised if these two are same bill, different hops. I mean, obviously, you're talking about a 0.5% ABV difference here. I'm curious, did they call out hops on these? They come off as just very, very, very similar for me. They are different, but just the way the mouthfeel is, how the beer presents itself, how it drinks is very, very similar. A little bit more resinous over here. Slightly a bit more fruity over here, but I mean, we're in the same ballpark here. I actually enjoy, up to this point, I'm actually enjoying quite a bit. You get so analytical into these things where you kind of talk about them instead of actually just saying if you enjoy them or not. Hopefully that kind of comes across. Let's dive into Union Jack. You can absolutely tell that's the biggest of the bunch, without question. There's just a fullness to that mouthfeel. Again, it's not ultra heavy, but it is West Coast, so it's not like fluffy, creamy kind of New England style. There's just a fullness to the mouthfeel. There's definitely a bit more of everything here, but what the most of everything is just a little bit more West Coast vibes on it. Again, we're not getting this super resinous, super pininess territory here. It's not going to be confused with a crazy West Coast IPA, like a crazy one. But with that fuller mouthfeel, and with that little elevated bump of that prickly kind of grainy kind of West Coastiness, it's very... You would hope, or I would hope, if I drank these blind, I think I might be like, I think these are all from the same brewery, because you can kind of feel the Firestone Walker DNA here, at least the West Coast DNA of IPA, and you know, I might not call it, almost certainly wouldn't call it the brewery if I did these as mystery beers. But I mean, I would be like, I think these are all the same brews, because there's an inherent DNA throughout the set, throughout all four of these beers. Well, this one is much more fruity. Well, these two are ultra similar with a slight hop variance, and while this one you can tell is the big brother of the group. They all have this very similar kind of, it's almost like a Pilsner malt, Crystal, Vienna kind of combo. You know, again, the malt bill seems same, slightly different. The hop dosing seems same, very different. Obviously, you're running the gamut from your 7 to your sub 5s on ABV. What was this one again? 5 on the nose. Sorry, not sub 5. But there is just this Firestone Walker-iness throughout the whole thing, from the cleanliness of the beer, the cleanness of the beer, to the, you know, the snappiness of the beers. These are West Coast beers through and through. They're hyper well made. There's no negative to them. They just express hops in a very different way. In the sense of, how do I have an analogy. I can't pull it out. Have you ever gone to a restaurant? Multiple occasions, it had different dishes, and you just tell the chef has a plan, and their plan is very succinct. And while the dishes vary, there's a core to it that just a DNA that I keep talking about is inherent in these beers, and it is just Firestone Walker through and through. So, what is my favorite of the group? Listen, I'm gonna default from lowest to highest without even drinking the beer. You know, I like Team Low ABV. Put that aside. I think that's the right call for me. I think the variants you're getting from top to bottom are subtle enough to where I don't think the extra ABVs really pay for it. And to be perfectly honest, from a strictly taste standpoint, I think the itty bitty one is my favorite. As a mixed pack, as a 4 beers and a mixed 12 pack, it's a fun, subtle ride. You know, when I drink, if I'm going to have 4 beers in a night, which I'm having tonight, I guess. I run the gamut, man. I really do. I'll start out with a lager, I will then elevate to something dark, typically low ABV porter, dunkel, Schwarzbier. Then I'm off to an IPA, single or double, then maybe a stout, or a barley wine, or maybe I go low ABV IPA, double IPA, something. This is a 4-pack, or a 12-pack of 4 different beers for strictly IPA lovers. You know what I mean? Because you're getting such a small variance from top to bottom. You just have to, 1, dig on hops. 2, dig on West Coast influenced beers, because these aren't, I wouldn't call these straight up West Coast beers, but there's hefty West Coast influences here. And you like well-made clean beers. If haze is your thing, and that's what really makes or breaks a beer for you, the turbidity and the things about hazies that are just that drop out all bitterness, turbidity, those little things. This might not be the 4-pack for you, but if you dig on beer, clean beer, well-made beer, you like West Coast IPA, you dig on East Coast flavors, New England style hops, it's kind of a perfect marriage of all of those. So that's kind of where this sucker lies on this mix pack for me, is that would I buy this mix pack? I would. I'd buy it for a party, so I have variants. And I would buy it as maybe it's Firestone Walker. They're going to be ultra shelf stable beers. So it's one of those things where this fulfills my IPA quota for the month. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to go out and buy any kind of beer, it's going to be the lagers, the Schwarzbiers, the Dunkels, those kind of beers. To kind of, if I want to have a couple beers in a night, this is going to fulfill that hoppy portion of the show, I'd say, not hazy. So yeah, I'm not going to do this as one of the better. I'm just going to say, what's my favorite of the group? This one. Is this one of the favorite low ABV beers I've had as of late? Yes. Is it Mount Rushmore status on the outside looking in? But very tasty nonetheless, and everything else is quite nice. Probably the biggest one is probably my least favorite of the group, only because I don't think you're getting a big payoff for the ABV here. 7%, not that big, but as a mix pack, quite nice. Value and availability on this, I hope this comes in right around what these mix packs typically come in at, which are, like in my area, about $20 to $23 a 12-pack. Hopefully that's the case. It is Firestone Walker, so chances are you're going to be able to find this. They have wide distribution. At least they've always been available to me, I believe, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, my 3 main residences. And leave you with, if you like what will you like this? I said it already. If you dig on hops, but you're not stuck in a hazy game, you're not a haze boy or a hop thot. Well, maybe you're a hop thot, but not a haze boy. You'll dig on these. So there you go. Reviewing the books. Hopefully you enjoyed. Down there, if you want to talk about it, Massive Beers, if you want to check me out in the social media stuff, Beer Massive, podcasting stuff. And hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of Firestone Walker Haze right now. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers.